Mexican food and seafood are two absolutely wonderful cuisines, but you don't see them intersect that much, at least not in Omaha. And that is something that was the case until about 6 or 7 years ago when we started kind of seeing some seeds being planted about this place called Isla Del Mar. Hey there, Omaha. Welcome into another episode of Restaurant Hoppen. I'm your host, Dan Hoppen, and Mexican food and seafood are two absolutely wonderful cuisines, but you don't see them intersect that much, at least not in Omaha. And that is something that was the case until about 6 or 7 years ago when we started kind of seeing some seeds being planted about this place called Isla Del Mar. And I've just fallen in love with this place now. It is an absolutely wonderful place, and I had to have the chef on the podcast. Ismara Gonzalez, thank you so much for being a part of the show. Welcome to the show today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So you have a vast menu at your restaurant, but really at the heart of it, it is kind of that intersection of Mexican food and seafood. What is it about that cuisine that makes you so passionate?
Well, when I started with the restaurant, I realized that many restaurants, Mexican restaurants, we emphasize more in traditional food, more like tacos, burritos. So when I started with the restaurant, I like to be different. I like to bring something different, something that people will be like, oh my God, what is she doing? But I want to try it. So when I started with the restaurant, I realized that there's things, restaurants, food in Mexico that we don't hear here in the United States. So I wanted to bring that side so people could, get to know it. When I started doing the seafood, I wanted to go a little wild, so people would be like interested in, coming to see what we had. So, I mean, that's how I started, just doing something different.
What do you mean when you say you wanted to be a little wild?
Well, I mean, you didn't really see in Mexican restaurants like big octopus or big shrimp with head on. And I just wanted to bring things that, you wouldn't see in a regular restaurant. Mm-hmm. So that's what I meant, being wild and those kind of things.
Well, presentation is so important, especially when it comes to kind of introducing a new concept to a wide group of people. Like ceviche is, I mean, it seems like maybe to you and me, people who are immersed in food all the time, it's just like, oh yeah, that's a commonplace. But a lot of people, like, I bet if I asked my parents what's ceviche, they wouldn't be able to tell me. And so if you're going to get people to come in and try that, you can't just throw it, well, you can put it on the menu, but to be more effective, you turn it into a tower. And like you said, you have that head-on shrimp on there. You dress it up with some really bright and vibrant slices of avocado, things like that. I mean, the presentation plays a huge part in what you create at your restaurants, right?
Yes. I believe that when we also cook, it's art. So it's a different kind of art, that will bring people to try it. And I think for me, when I look at food, I mean, the first thing, it's how it looks. That's what brings me to it. And then after that, the taste. But I think, having a good presentation is important.
You had a quote, I believe this was from Omaha magazine, but you said, it's a side of Mexico, speaking of Sinaloan cuisine, it's a side of Mexico that not a lot of people know, so I wanted to introduce that. Was there any, as you were thinking about unleashing this concept, was there any, like, consternation with you, like, well, no one else in Omaha is doing this, maybe, like, Omaha isn't going to get this? Or was it like, when Omaha tastes this food, they're going to go nuts for it because it's delicious?
I think I had both in my mind. One was, well, nobody else is doing it. Why? Is it not working or people are not having good results? But then the other side was like, well, we have a lot of things that are very similar. When people try something new, they might like it. So I had both ideas in my head.
Mm-hmm. It is so interesting what you said right off the top. Like, there are so many Mexican restaurants that do focus on tortas, enchiladas, tacos, tamales, things that I think a lot of people immediately recognize as Mexican, but we don't really think of seafood as Mexican. And yet you look at Mexico, and there's just tens of thousands of miles of sea-bearing coast there. And it only makes sense to highlight that part of, the cuisine. How excited are you to be able to be the person who brings that to Omaha and let us experience this thing that is so vibrant in Mexico, but so many of us wouldn't get if it weren't for you?
Yeah, well, at first, it was a challenge. I think it's more of how we were, I would say how I was raised, just the idea or the concept of, working with seafood is dangerous. It can get people sick if you don't do it right. I mean, I think with any food. But I think that stayed in my head for a while, it's like if I don't do something right, people can get sick or, they may even die or, I had a lot of fear in that. But I think that once you get to know, more about it, you study more about it, and you lose that fear and you say, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be the first one to do this, and I'm not scared. Whatever happens, happens. And if it doesn't work out, well, at least I tried it,
Well, it's working out for you because you've got 3 locations now. One in South Omaha off 36th Street, one out west off about 132nd and Center, and one in Papillion. I mean, to see that kind of growth in such a short amount of time, really, really fascinating. But I want to be clear in that, yes, I would say the core of your menu and what you do at your restaurants is seafood, but you also offer beef, birria, chicken, sushi. What made you want to expand just off of, hey, here's Mexican seafood, but no, I'm going to offer some other things as well?
I think what happened was I when we started with the seafood, there was families that had, a brother or a sister there, like, no, I don't like seafood. And I thought about it. I was like, I should add something else, so I can have that option. But when this really happened was when I added other food was when COVID hit. That's when I was like, okay, I have to do everything I can, to survive. I just started on 36th Street. I think we were there for 4 months before the pandemic. And I was like, we work so hard, so I have to try anything I can. So that's when I introduced beef, when I introduced the birria, when I introduced chicken. And I was like, I'm going to sell anything I can, And it was amazing how one thing that I was, let's do all this. And then when the pandemic passed, people were asking for birria and steak and chicken. And I was like, okay, we should keep this, So I think that decision happened out of, the pandemic.
Tell me about the birria, because I think that was, I'm trying to think back now because we're going back 5 or 6 years, but I think that was actually how I first became aware of your concept is you guys had a food truck, and I started seeing on Omaha Food Lovers or just all over social media just pictures of these birria tacos or quesabirria, and I was just like, holy smokes, this looks incredible. And then we were talking off the mics, I got a chance to experience it at a Dandelion pop-up, and I was like, yep, this is a restaurant that I'm going to. Where did your birria recipe come from? Is that something that you've been cooking your whole life?
Well, the recipe came from a chef that I had at that time, and he did help us with the recipe. Later on, my mom, she had another recipe, so we kind of work with it. But I think one of the most important things here was that with any food that we bring in, I try to do it different, with the birria ramen, just an example of that. I started with that, and a lot of our, I mean, I did hear people saying, that's crazy, we don't do that. We don't make birria like that, that's not traditional. And it's one of those things that you don't, like, you just go for it, you just don't listen. You want to create something different, not respecting traditions and showing them, but also showing a different, perspective or a different idea.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a whole section of your menu devoted to birria. You've got tacos if somebody wants to stay super traditional, but you've also got a quesadilla, you have birria pizza, nachos, burrito, and then probably the craziest one, you just mentioned it, is birria ramen. How do you walk that line between staying true to what something is and what it originally was, like birria, and being fun and creative and putting unique twists on it? How do you walk that line?
Well, I respect it. I respect traditions, so I keep some of those traditions with me, and then I try something different. I like I said, I don't think I would, do some kind of food and then just change it all, everything, I think just mostly respect for it, and then just do something else with myself.
What is it about birria that makes it so fun to play with and incorporate in different dishes?
Well, I think it's very easy. It's meat, so it's a protein, so you can pretty much do anything with it. It's just have an idea, or just think of Mexican food. We go back to it, like tamales or quesadillas, and then you start thinking of all this food that we have, and then you just add birria to it, and it's just you just create something different.
Are there any other birria ideas you've had or anything in development?
Yeah, I have a lot of ideas. I kind of had to stop myself just because we have a really huge menu. But I have a lot of ideas, crazy ideas. I just kind of have to hold myself a little bit.
Okay. Let's get back to seafood. What is it about? How do ceviche and aguachile represent you and the way that you like to cook?
It represents me in a way that of my traditions, of my culture. Since I was little, I remember my dad, taking me to a seafood restaurant, and I've always ordered the aguachiles, the ceviche, oysters. At my age, I was 5 years old, and I loved it. So coming here and introducing that, it reminds me of my roots, of my childhood, of a time that we will say, that I was very happy, but I think that it just brings me back to that time.
The restaurant industry is very, very difficult. The margins are slim, the hours are long, it's hard on the body. It's not an easy job to have. But when you are like rooted in memories, and even as I see you talking about that memory right there, you smile. Like when you have that memory and those good feelings to fall back on, is that what keeps you going when the times get really tough?
Yes. I think that just, remembering what we went through and those happy moments, my parents, the people that are working with us, seeing everyone and the customers, clients coming in and telling us, oh, wow, this is amazing, we love what you're doing. I think that all of that is what keeps us going, because there's times that, there's rough times, I think, with everyone. And sometimes you just want to be like, okay, I just don't want to do this anymore. I just want to run away. But then you come back to it and you're like, no, I'm just tired. I just have to rest. But I think that all of it, all the work and every everything that we've done and all the people that have been with us, I think that's very, very important. And I think that's what keeps me going.
Well, and like, you think about that memory that you have. How many people have you given a similar memory, similar to that, to over the past 5, 6, 7 years? Whether it's a child or whether it's someone like me who I'd had ceviche before, but when I had your ceviche for the first time, I was like, oh, this is what it's supposed to taste like. Like, this is what it tastes like when it's really good. Or, I mean, you've got octopus, you've got manta ray, you've got whole fried snapper on your menu. Like, there are dishes on your menu that you're not going to get many places in the Midwest, much less Omaha. How impactful is that for you that you're getting a chance to be the one to introduce people to this special food for the first time?
Well, I feel very grateful that I had the opportunity, to do this. I feel like I'm very blessed by God to be able to do this, and like how I felt when I was that age. I think I've made that impact in a lot of people, because they've mentioned it to me. They've said, this reminds me when I was with my grandma or when I was back home. An emotion. I've seen kids, just jumping and, oh, Mom, look at this. This is amazing. Or it's just, I hear it and I see it and I'm like, I know how it feels, So that emotion, that feeling, and I just stay there and I'm like, wow, I'm so grateful to be able to, to in a way give that emotion to other people.
Well, we're grateful that you're bringing that emotion to us, because it's been fun to journey and experience new dishes at your restaurants. How have you seen Omaha widen its bounds a little bit and be willing to experiment with you? Because I'm going to use the octopus dish specifically. I mean, I can't think of anywhere else in town where you come and you get, I mean, it's beautiful, but it's basically like an octopus with giant tentacles coming out of it. It's a stunning dish, something that looks great on social media, but I think most people would look at it and be like, whoa, I've never eaten anything like this before. Like, should I eat this? How have you seen Omaha kind of go outside its bounds? We've got a nice little line here that we're comfortable in, but how have you seen diners be willing to cross that and try new things?
Well, it's happening. It's happening. When we started, I did see that a lot of people that, they were used to it, or they've seen it before, they tried it before, so it was something normal. And it was hard to for other people that have never tried it, to even look at it, or their face, they were like, "Why? What is that?" But now it's like I see everyone eating it, and it's like I want to try it. I want to see how how it looks, how it feels. And I see it in every table now, and I think about it. I was like, wow, I remember back then that there was only a few people that tried it, and now like everyone, the octopus especially, at first it wasn't something that we didn't sell that much, and now it's one of our highest seller. So that tells me like people are getting more comfortable. They're trying new things, and I mean it's working.
And sometimes it's just being exposed to something and knowing that something exists. Now, I'm a pretty adventurous eater, but I remember the first time that I saw a picture of that octopus on social media, I came in like within a week, because I was like, I love octopus, but I was like, that looks amazing, and I just have to experience it. I don't know where else I'm going to get that. I need to try it. So you're giving people that opportunity.
Yeah.
I think an obvious question when you look at where we're located in Omaha, Nebraska, smack dab middle of the United States, and you come into Isla Del Mar, and I mean, the fish tastes like it was swimming 10 minutes ago. Obviously, it's not. But how do you source seafood to taste that fresh?
Well, it was a lot of work. At first, I started buying it with suppliers in Nebraska, but then I wanted to reach, that part of having the freshest seafood. So I had to travel. I went to Mexico. I went to California. It was I purchased, seafood, and it ended up being a scam. And there were things, I think it was a 2 year that it took us to actually find a really good provider, and that will get us first quality of seafood. And with us, for me, it's like, I want to give people what they will give to me, I want to make sure I have the highest quality. If it's something that it's not going to be highest quality, I don't want to serve it. So I think it took us some time, a lot of research, traveling, expenses, but we were able to find the right people.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah. You kind of talked about it already, but I want to talk about how vast the menu is. Because, you've got 10 shrimp dishes alone on your menu. You have almost 50 sushi rolls. You've got the birria menu. You've got tacos. You've got ceviches and aguachiles. It just goes on and on and on. And at most restaurants, I would see that and be like, no, there's no way they're executing all these dishes at a high level. Like, this is just too much. And yet you guys pull it off. What gave you the confidence that I can create this huge menu with so many things on it, but everything is still going to be created with intention, and we are going to execute it at the highest level? Where did that confidence come from?
I think that mostly we saw our, our proteins and what we were able to do with each of them. So even though that's a very huge menu, we end up working with the same proteins. So it's just being more creative with what we have, and I think that has helped us a lot. Can
we talk sushi?
Yes.
What's your approach to sushi?
Well, I love sushi. I love it, but I also wanted to introduce, sushi with a Latin style to it. I know a lot of people are, that's not sushi or this, but it's like, this is how I do things. I like to respect traditions, but I also like to do it my way, do a different idea.
You like to get creative.
Yeah. I like people to see it from a different perspective, and just, because sometimes we're just in this box of things should be this way, and, they're always this way. So I always like to be like, okay, I respect this, but I want to show you another box,
So what's an example of a Latin twist on sushi?
One of our famous rolls is the cielo mar y tierra, which is it has chicken, beef, and shrimp.
Air, land, and sea.
Yes. Yeah. So I never had anything like that in sushi. So that was my way of introducing it to our Hispanic community, because a lot of Hispanics at that time when we started, they didn't like sushi, or they didn't know about sushi. So I kind of wanted to find a way to bring them in and try it. And the way to do it was that way, doing something with chicken and beef and shrimp. And then a lot of people that have tried sushi before, I wanted to try for them to try something different,
And you're not afraid to play around with the sushi, because you've got the one that you mentioned. You've also got a Baconator roll. You've got a sushi roll where it's like a deep fried avocado that's stuffed, and you're willing to color outside the lines a little bit. And you mentioned this a little bit earlier, that sometimes people might say, well, it's not traditional. Mm-hmm. I know that you respect tradition, but what makes you say, okay, I respect that you want things to be traditional, but we can also have some fun with it. Like, there can be both and, right?
Yes. I think with Like I said, respecting traditions, just in general, like, with my family, their traditions, I respect them. And I want them to also see my side, what I want to do differently, tradition respecting, but I also want to, let's create something new. We are new generations, and bringing our tradition with us, but also creating something new for the newer traditions, newer generations. I'm sorry.
And I love what you have, because if somebody wants to come in and they want to have that, more traditional sushi roll that really highlights the fish, they can do that. If they want to come in and have a roll with chicken and skirt steak that's deep fried, they can do that. And honestly, like, I like that approach a little bit more, that you can kind of choose your own adventure versus being shoehorned onto one specific path. I'm so curious about one thing. When you're creating sushi rolls, how do you balance just, I have this beautiful fish that I've worked so hard to source. You talked about this earlier, and I know that it's a great product. What's the balance between highlighting that and also adding really fun elements, other, vegetables or fruits that might be in the roll, and adding sauces and drizzles? How do you balance being fun, being creative, but not overwhelming this beautiful fish that you've been gifted?
I think that's the part where you have to find a balance. And when we create a roll, we do a lot of testing first. Because, I truly understand that part, that we work so hard to get this, fish or octopus, and we have to make sure that it doesn't lose its flavor, natural flavor. So I think there is when we start doing different, tests. We try it and we see if it works, but we do appreciate it. If we feel that it doesn't taste like it anymore, then we don't want to serve it. We want to make sure that the flavor stays there. But like you said, in a different in a fun way. But it's just more finding a balance. Finding, okay, this taste. How does this taste? Okay, let's try it with this. Let's try it with that. So there's a lot of work behind creating a dish, creating a sushi. It has to go through, testings and trying, and also our clients see how they respond to it. If it's something that they like, we keep it. If it's something that it doesn't sell much, then we just take it away.
What is an example of a roll that you are really proud of? Whether it's just super creative, or this one went through a ton of R&D and we just couldn't get it, and then we finally got it. Or maybe one that you think is really great and customers, are kind of sleeping on and need to discover a little bit. Just whatever direction you want to take. Like, what's the sushi roll that you want to highlight that you feel represents you?
I think it's the Cielo Mar y Tierra.
Okay.
The one with the chicken and the shrimp. I think that's what represents me. It's, just a different idea. And I think it's one of our highest seller as well. I think a lot of people like it. And one that, we do sell a lot of raw sushi rolls, nigiri, sashimi. So I think maybe not a lot of people know about that we also have sashimi and nigiris that are really, really good. We have our fish, our salmon, it's very fresh. We always never frozen, so we try to work on those, like high quality seafood. So I think a lot of people don't realize that we have, the nigiri and the sashimi, which I think it would be good for them to try.
Yeah, let's let more people know about it. You're working so hard to source that great fish.
Yeah.
Let's come in and taste it.
Exactly.
How did you get into cooking originally?
Well, I love cooking all my life. Since I was little, I love to cook. The idea of me loving to cook was more, it will bring my family together. And I love when I would, just simple things like a salad or a chicken or something that I would make. I love their faces, and I love how they were so happy and that they really, really enjoy it. So I think I love the side of cooking that will make people happy. I think that stayed with me. And I've always felt like when I cooked, this is my love for them. This is a way to show them how I feel. So I love to cook since I was little. And I started going to school, culinary school. I was there for a year. But I've always loved it. I think the part that I love the most about cooking is creating dishes, just different ideas, different way of thinking. Let's, this is sweet, let's add, I don't know, sour to it, or just see how it tastes, But I've always loved that. And I think that emotion of showing my love to others, I think that's that's the reason why I love cooking.
You mentioned culinary school. Where'd you go to culinary school?
I went to Metro.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it was almost a year, but I think I learned a lot of things. I remember I had a chef. I can't remember his name out of my head right now, but I remember him telling me when he asked who wants to open a restaurant, and I said I want to open a restaurant, and I was just, I don't know, I just said it just to say it. I wasn't very sure about it. And I remember him telling me, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think you should open a restaurant. That's the worst idea. I'm a personal chef, and I think you would do better, doing this. That was his opinion, which I respected. But he really impacted me, when I remember when I was cooking, and he was very hard on us, It was like, he would just look at our dishes, and if he didn't like the presentation, he's like, no, I don't like it. He wouldn't even try it.
Oh, wow.
But I love the way he teach, I understood it. So I pushed myself to make a really nice presentation for him. I remember him trying my food and being like, wow, this is really good. And that made me feel like, wow, I have potential, coming from him, because he didn't really try anything. So I think he really did something in my life, He pushed me. And I love the way he teach, He was very harsh, but he was very honest. And I think it's good to have someone to be honest with you, When something doesn't taste good, it's good. It's good to be honest and be like, this doesn't taste good. And respecting that, but it's like, how can I make it better? So I think it's important.
Yeah, you got to have somebody speaking truth into your life, because if you're making food, and especially young in your career, and it's just okay, and it's not really restaurant quality, and people are just like, oh yeah, this is really good, you're not going to push yourself to improve. Exactly. You're not going to think about, okay, no, this dish isn't good enough. What does it need to get to that next level where somebody's going to be willing to pay $10, $15, $20 for it? So to have somebody in your life who was willing to go there and be uncomfortable with you, honestly, and be like, hey, this is not good enough, it kind of hurts in the moment, but it's really important long term.
Yeah, you do need that in your life. You need it, especially with this kind of business. You have to have, you have to be brave, and you have to know that you're going to get a lot of criticism, It could be good, bad, or in between. I believe that everything's good, I believe that when we get a bad comment, it's just a way of letting us know, hey, you're doing this wrong, At first, it did hurt me, but I think with time, you kind of are, you learn, and you say, okay, what am I doing? I've heard this is the second comment on this. What am I doing wrong? Let me look into it. It's a way of, thanking people for letting me know in their way, which is good. But then that helps me, okay, well, I have to do this better. Their service, okay, I have to work on my service, or this dish there's something wrong with it. Let me look into it, I appreciate all the good comments too, because it makes me feel like, okay, we're doing something right. You know, people are really seeing what we're doing. You know, we are working hard and people are appreciating. But like I said, I think everything, it's great. You know, it's good. It hurts, but we need it. It's necessary, you know?
Oh, absolutely. I will never forget. I think it was in my first year doing this show. I was starting to feel like, oh, I'm getting pretty good at this interviewing, this whole podcasting thing. And I was getting a lot of good positive feedback. And then I got a comment from somebody on social media who was like, you need, like, I love your content, but I'm going to stop listening to your show if you don't stop, like, in between, when someone was answering a question, I would say, like, yeah, or I would hop in and, like, say affirming things. And he's like, it is so annoying, I can't listen to your show anymore. And at first, my first emotion was, who's this guy? Screw this guy. I'm not going to listen to that. And then I went back and listened to a couple episodes. I took the ego down, listened to a couple episodes, and I was like, oh my gosh, I do that all the time. Dan, shut up and let the person talk. And I think it's made the show a lot better. So, yeah, you got to have that filter where if you take every comment that someone makes, that could be crushing, and you can't listen to all that, but you do have to have an open mind too to say, yes, I do have room to improve here, and you know what? That's a great point. That's going to make this dish better. That's going to make my business plan better. That's going to make this style of service better. And so I commend you for being open-minded and being willing to listen. I mean, for all the instructors that you had, it's this one that was hypercritical of you that you look back on and you're like, that really helped shape me and shape my career.
Yeah. I think with everything in my life, I think the people that were hard on me, but they were very, very helpful. You know, I think they were. I mean, I remember going back to high school. You know, I remember, I don't know if it was a teacher. I remember speaking to one. I was, you know, I really want to do better in school. You know, I want to get a better GPA and this and that. Will she look at my grades? And she's like, no, you're not going to be able to. At that time, I was like, why? You're a teacher. Like, how can you say this to me? At that time, it was very painful. And I was like, I can't believe she said this to me. But then I look back and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so thankful. I'm so grateful for you to be able to, okay, this is what you think. And let me show you that I can do it. You know, I think what she said at that time, it kind of pushed me to, yeah, you can do it, you know? So I am very grateful to her. Another thing that happened to me, I remember my dad, you know, when I told him I'm going to open a business, with everything that I was going in my life, which you know, there was things, and he said, I don't think you can open a business, you know, and that really hurt me too. I was like, you're my dad, like, you should be supporting me, like, you should be like, hey, yeah, you can do it. But no, he was a business person, and I think he knew what he was doing. I think he knew me well enough that he pushed that and then said that, and I was like, why? No, I'm going to show you that I'm able to do it. So I think the people that came into my life and they were, I wouldn't think back then that they were mean or hard or whatever. They were angels, you know. There were people that show me, hey, you know, I'm telling you this because I know you and I know you're going to push yourself harder. So I'm very grateful for that.
I find it interesting that you said when that instructor asked who's going to open a restaurant, you said me, because that was not your first business venture. You did not come into this saying, yep, I'm going to open a restaurant. You were a fitness instructor that was trying to open a business selling health conscious foods. Where did that come from? How is that your passion?
Well, there was a time in my life that, you know, it was very dark, and I kind of started working out, and that helped me a lot. I will say I was going through maybe depression, or I don't know what was going on with me. And when I started working out, I noticed a big difference in my life. I started seeing the light, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. I want to do this. This is my passion. I want to help people. And I started doing that, and I felt so good. I wasn't earning anything, but I love what I was doing. and I wanted to sell, like, vegetables, fruits, healthy food, and things to introduce to people that, maybe they were going through something similar to me. And I kind of wanted to do that. That was, at that time, that was my passion. I mean, I still love doing that, but that was my passion. And it didn't work out. People were not buying. They were, I don't know, maybe my approach wasn't the right at the time, or I don't know what was going on, but I just felt like, okay, this is not working, and it's just making me get in trouble with rent and other things. And we work so hard, me and my husband, doing trainings for people and just trying to get by. And there was a friend of us that was like, hey, why don't you just sell seafood? And I was like, no, I'm not going to sell. I don't want to open a restaurant. That's not my intention. I mean, I love to cook, but that's not what I want to do. He kept insisting for 6 months, and I was like, oh my God. And he was like, okay, well, I'm going back to Mexico. If you like, I can teach you. I don't want to get anything out of this. I just see you and your husband working really hard and hardly making it. I just want to help you guys. And I was like, okay, let's do it. So I brought all the ingredients. He showed me how to do the seafood tower. I remember posting it online and people reaching out to me. 60 towers sold. And I was like, okay, what is going on? The next day it was double. The third day it was more. And it just kept growing and growing and growing and growing. And I was like, wow, I didn't know people had this need for seafood here, And that's when I started seeing, wow, let's bring something different,
Well, I think a lot of it goes back to what we talked about a while ago when we were talking about presentation. And yeah, you eat with your eyes first, and you want to wow people. Like, if you're going to get somebody, I mean, just think about what your concept was. We're a health food store that is going to sell the seafood dish. That's pretty out there. Like, to have somebody be like, yes, I'm going to drive to this place that I've never been to before, buy seafood from a person that I don't know who it is. It's not a restaurant, but I'm going to bring it home and I'm going to enjoy it. That's a little out there. Like, if I told my wife, hey, I've got this idea, we're going to do this tonight, she'd be like, what? What are we doing? But those pictures that you put up were so visually arresting and just so like, I've never seen anything like that before, that all you have to do is show that to someone and they'll be like, yeah, tell me when to drive, tell me where I need to drive, tell me when I need to be there, tell me how much money you want, and I'll give it to you. How shocked were you at the response from the community?
It was very shocking because, in your mind you have this ideas of, that you're going to do something and you do it, you create it, and you're like, oh, you're going to do very well and people are going to buy from you. And then you realize that, okay, it's not working. And then you try something that you never thought it was going to work. You never imagined. You just, okay, let's do it. And you do it, and the result is like, wow, you have a line through the door, just coming to buy this item. And you're just like, okay, what is going on? Like, you prepare for something and it's not it. And then you do something else and it works. So that's the part when my faith was, stronger. I was like, wow, this is God, For me, I'm a believer, and I believe that everything that we're doing right now, the restaurants and everything, it's God, working for us, giving us this opportunity, this blessing, So I was shocked. I was like, I had this, idea of my life that I was going to do this, but God is taking me somewhere else, and I'm just going to do it.
Isn't it amazing to think that, like, whenever this was, and you're struggling, you have this business that you're so passionate about, but you can't get people to buy, like, the concept just isn't taken off for whatever reason, you're struggling to pay rent, and I imagine your faith was tested at that point, and you were just like, God, where are you? What are you doing? And he's just smiling, and he's like, in however many years, like, in a few years from now, she's going to have 3 like huge restaurants and she has no idea. I love thinking like those flashbulb moments where we're like at our lowest and we're like, God, where are you? And he's like, oh no, I'm here. And I got big plans for you. Just you wait to see what I've got up my sleeve. So at what point did you realize like that this was a wake-up call and it was like, oh, this isn't just my friend telling me that I should be selling seafood. Like, there's something here. Omaha wants this.
Well, in this process, before selling the seafood, I pray to God. I was, Jesus, help me. I don't know how to do this. I think in a part of our lives, we go through things that we just feel that we're not capable of, of making it through, or that we need guidance. And I remember praying and asking him, please, send me someone or help me, guide me. And my wake-up call was when this friend, he helped us, he showed us, and his name is Jesus. So that's when I was like, okay, this is crazy. That's when I realized that he was hearing me, he was listening to me. And it might sound crazy to a lot of people, but for me, going through what I went through in that experience, and a friend coming, out of nowhere, showing up and helping me out, and his name is Jesus, is kind of like, okay, like you are listening to me,
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I was like, okay, this is something that I have to do, this is, I don't know my purpose yet, but I think this is going to take me there.
So what was the next step?
The next step, it was so fast. Like, we didn't even have time to think. It was everything was happening so fast. Like, we started selling the seafood, and then more seafood. And then I remember my mom at that time, she was making some shrimp quesadilla, shrimp tacos for my nephews. And I was like, let's sell that too. It's part of it. Let's do it. And we started selling that. And then we created another dish with the same protein. And then there was more people coming in, and more and more and more, that we honestly didn't have a time to sit down and be like, okay, what's our plan? Let's create a business plan, or where do we want to see ourselves in many years? We didn't have a chance to do that. Everything was just happening so fast. And I remember we were growing so fast that I remember I was working out at a Planet Fitness at that time, and on 36th Street, and there was a space there. It was a huge space, and it was empty, and I looked into it. I was like, wow, in 10 years, I want to have this restaurant here, I really want to have Isla Del Mar here. And it kept calling me, it was like, look at it, call and ask, So I got the number, and I called. Someone answered, and they started asking me questions, like more personal, like your family, what do you do? And I was like, okay, this is weird, I'm just calling to ask for the prize. And then there was this voice of this older guy. He was like, by the way, I'm the owner. I'm Jerry, I'm the owner. And I am asking you all this because I like to get to know the people that I'm renting to, And he's like, I'm interested. I want to see your restaurant. He said he was going to go on Monday, but he ended up going on a Saturday when we were so busy. I remember I was in the kitchen. He called me, and I went out, and he was there sitting down. He was eating, I remember, tilapia with the head on, which was weird. And it was weird for us because, not a lot of people like the tilapia with the head on, And he sat down with me, and he was like, I love what you're doing. I love the fact that you're, bringing people together, and this looks very happy, I want you at the other location, I want you on 36th Street. And I looked at him, and I'm like, it was a small space. It was a capacity of 60 people. And I was like, I can't do that. You're that other big restaurant, the other big place is capacity of 400 people. It's like, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. And he looked at me. He's like, what you're doing is amazing, and I want you there. So time passed, and he was a very friend of us, a mentor. He was very smart, and he believed in me, which was amazing because he's like, you don't even know me. You don't even know me, and you see all of this in me is I don't know what's going on. So him believing in me that way made me believe in me. So I made that jump. I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And I was like, I don't want to fail him. I don't want to fail him because he believes in me. But I remember him talking to everyone and being like, she's amazing. She does all these things. And I was like, how can he say that about me if he doesn't know me? And I think it was another angel that came into my life, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. After we did it, we opened the restaurant. He was always there, mentoring me. And 2 years later, he's like, I have another place for you. And I was like, no. I was like, wow. Like, yeah, it's bigger. And I'm like, okay, who do you think I am? Like, how can you see me like that, And I think his faith in me was so big that it made me believe in myself to do it. I didn't know. I didn't have the experience I've worked in restaurants before, but I was a hostess. I was a waiter. I was never in prep or in the kitchen, or I was never a manager. So I didn't know all this, So I took that step because of his faith.
Have you ever asked him, hey, what did you see in me?
He passed away 2 years ago.
Okay.
November. And I never asked him that. I never asked him. I just knew that he was very kind. He was very strong. He was business smart. And, I remember he had an assistant that she told me after he passed that he was amazing and that he told her that he wanted to set up everything for me so I could be successful. But I never knew why. I never knew why.
Well, clearly he was a very wise man because he saw potential in you and you have fulfilled it. I'm so curious because of what you just talked about there. Like, it's one thing to cook for your family and friends, and then it's one thing to cook in a small restaurant. I mean, you're buying a certain amount of product, you're cooking a lot of dishes. When you scale up, that's when things get really difficult because you got to figure out how to produce things in mass. You have to learn how to trust other people. You have to train other people to prepare food, to make these beautiful dishes, to make food delicious. Like, it's not just you making every plate anymore. You've got to train other people. As you scaled up, especially at that first location, you mentioned you're going from 60 seats to 400. How did you figure out how to do that, essentially? I don't really have a better way of asking it, but just like, how?
I think we just move as we went, as how things were working. Like, I didn't have a plan for it, to be honest with you. I was just like, we're just going to open and see what happens. I think it was more faith of how you were going to do things. I think we were just going to, it was going to show us the way. So, and it did. We learned that we had to have a system that would work in a kitchen. Then I started learning how many people I needed, in the front line, in the back line, how many outside waiters and stuff, and how we were going to manage that. So slowly, like, it would show me, okay, this is what you need to do. You got to figure out this. Okay, this is taking a lot of time. Squeezing lime, that was a big one. We're squeezing, I don't know, like 30 boxes a week. It's natural lime. It's real lime. It's not juice. So I had to find a way, okay, how can I make this faster? And I think that's how we learn, step by step, challenges at the time. Okay, how can we do this? How can we do this better? How can we improve this? So I didn't have a plan, to be honest with you.
You just kind of went with it and figured it out.
Yeah.
Something that I find fascinating about your restaurants is they are very large, but they're also just super inviting and fun. Like each restaurant has its own personality. There are some restaurants where it feels very natural to, like, for me to go have lunch by myself and just, like, bring my computer or whatever. And to be completely honest, someone could do that at Isla Del Mar, but that, like, doesn't feel natural. Like, when you come to Isla Del Mar, you're coming with a group of people, you're coming with a family, you're going to have a good time, you're going to share a bunch of dishes. Like, it's kind of a really communal, I'm going to stop short of saying party, but, like, just a really uplifting atmosphere. How did you create that?
I think that, people that work with us, they're very, very important, and I think that we've always been very respectful and, trying to accommodate, trying to show them our values, as a family, but also as a company, creating those values, creating that culture in our company. I think it's important, what we want, what we are, and what we want to express to our clients. I think that's something that we also learn, and for us, the people that work with us are their family. Their family. They've been with us for a long time. We appreciate everything that they do, and I think that's important. Treating people right. Treating them with respect. Listening to them and trying to find ideas, not just in the restaurant, not just the work, but they have other things that they want to do, and we can help them. I think that's very, very important.
All right, I got two more questions before I let you get out of here. That I like to ask just about every guest that I have on this show. First one is this: what is one thing about working in restaurants or being a part of the restaurant community that you feel most of your guests don't understand, but you wish they did understand?
I think one thing, and I understand it too, is the part of maybe our menu being so big, or sometimes they wish our service was faster, or I think we put in a lot of effort to that, to be the best that we can. We work really hard. We work, not just us, not just me as an owner, but I think our kitchen, our prep, everyone, just they give their heart. It's not like it's another job. I don't see any of our people that are working with us to see like, oh, it's just another job, whatever. No, they put their heart to it. They love what they do. And I feel like maybe not a lot of people appreciate that, and I understand, because they don't see what's going behind, everything, having a big restaurant, but I think they work so hard, it's a lot of work, and it, having negative I don't know, reviews, feedback, which like I said, it does help, but other people that maybe working with us and they hear things like that, they be like, I'm trying my hardest, Sometimes we really have to be nice to people, understandable, I think when I go to places, restaurants, when something is wrong, I understand, there maybe the person is having a bad day, maybe because I have that understanding, I have that understanding that, something is broken in the kitchen, or they didn't get the ingredients they needed because of something happening, or X, Y, and Z. But just being being patient and being understanding that we are all human and we all make mistakes, and if you tell us, hey, this happened, we will listen, and okay, let's work it out, let's do something to help you with this, and then we'll learn from that, think not a lot of people see that.
Basically, just have grace and compassion. Be a
Yeah.
good human. Try and think about what other people might be going through.
Exactly.
And then I think I know the answer to this question because you've talked about it previously, but to put a nice positive bow on our conversation, what is your favorite part about being a part of the restaurant industry?
I like the people. I like, I don't know, knowing their stories, their struggles, their life, where they came from, what they do, what their dreams are. I like to be the light, I like to be positive and always encourage good things, and I love that. I want to be a blessing, in everyone's life. I that's something that's been in my mind since I was little. I want to be a blessing to people.
Well, you've been a blessing to a lot of people in Omaha, and I'm not even talking about your employees or those people that you've taught and that you've touched. I know you've made a big impact on them, but even just all of us people who eat your food, huge blessing. So if there's any chance that someone watching or listening to this has not been to Isla Del Mar, just change that. If you love, I was going to say if you love seafood, you got to go here. But even if you're not a seafood person, you can get steak, you can get chicken, you can get birria. Like, there's so much here, and it is all so good. And I'm so grateful that you brought it to us. And thank you so much for taking some time to come on the podcast today. I know I've asked you for a little while to come on the show, and you were nervous, but you jumped over that barrier. You made it happen today. You did a fantastic job. This was so much fun. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show and share with us.
No, well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I mean, this is big for me. I think that I just didn't want to show myself, I kind of wanted to be, back in the kitchen or, not people knowing who I was. But I think it's important to tell a story, to be able to show or tell my story, that what God has done for me, and for people around me, I think it's important. And I think that's what helped me get here.
I love your humility, but you do deserve the spotlight. And I think your story is an encouragement to other people that if you're struggling, just keep pushing because there are going to be opportunities and you might be able to catch something huge. So thank you for being honest and telling that story.
Thank you.
In Omaha, as always, thanks for eating with us.